Hidden in the heart of Philadelphia stands a fortress of forgotten voices, Eastern State Penitentiary. Opened in 1829, this prison was the first to implement solitary confinement as a method of reform. Inmates lived alone, ate alone, and exercised alone. Silence was enforced. Even the architecture reinforced isolation. High vaulted ceilings, single skylights meant to represent the eye of God. But what began as an experiment in moral rehabilitation became a descent into psychological torment. Over the decades, its cold stone walls held notorious criminals like Al Capone and Slick Willie Sutton. But it wasn't just the living that filled these halls. Guards, visitors, and even skeptics have reported disembodied whispers, ghostly figures, and the sound of footsteps in cell blocks that have long been empty. In cell block 12, voices echo without source. In cell block 4, shadows move where no one stands. Some say it's the weight of guilt that lingers. Others believe something far older and far darker took root in the isolation. Now a preserved ruin, Eastern State draws historians and ghost hunters alike. But as they walk its crumbling halls, a question hangs heavy in the air. Were these echoes left by the imprisoned souls? Or is the penitentiary itself still watching, still waiting? The walls remain silent, but silence here says everything. The letter had no stamp, no sender, just a thick, yellowed envelope sealed with wax, the imprint of a single open eye staring back at him. Rafik held it in his hands for a long time before breaking it open. The paper inside smelled faintly of burnt cedar. The writing was jagged, erratic, but familiar. One sentence stood out beneath a hand-drawn map. Hear the 5th bell. That was all. No greeting, no date. But the handwriting, it was unmistakably Azim's. Rafik hadn't heard from him in 5 years. Not since he'd taken that trip into the mountains, chasing stories about silence, enlightenment, and a monastery that had been abandoned for decades. A place called Dharmagar. The last anyone knew, Azim had gone there for a spiritual retreat. He never came back. The police had no leads. The locals only whispered. The monastery was cursed, they said. The monks had vanished. The 5th bell was never meant to be heard. Rafik hadn't gone looking back then. Part of him had tried to forget. But this letter, it changed something. He left within days, map in hand, traveling north through Chitral, through narrow mountain roads and dying villages that warned him not to go further. Even the guides refused to take him beyond a certain ridge. So he walked, alone. For 4 days, he hiked through snow and stone, the monastery growing closer, heavier, as if the mountain itself were pushing back. On the 4th evening, just as the sun dipped behind the peaks, he saw it. The monastery, Dharmagar. It stood like a broken crown, its spires cracked and leaning, half swallowed by snow. The wind had died completely. Even the birds were silent. Then he heard it. A bell, low, echoing. Once, then twice, then a 3rd time, then a 4th, and then silence. No 5th bell. The air felt too still, too aware. The letter hadn't said to ring the 5th bell, said to hear it. And somehow Rafik knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. The Monastery That Breathes. The wind stopped the moment Rafik stepped through the broken gates of Dharmagar. No howling gusts, no crunching snow, just silence, deep and unnatural. The kind of silence that feels heavy, personal, like something is listening back. The courtyard was buried under years of snow and rot. Vines strangled crumbling statues of meditating monks. A prayer will lay split in half near a collapsed wall. The place was dead but not empty. Rafik could feel it. The buildings leaned inward, as if the monastery were breathing slow, steady, shallow. His boots sank into the snow as he crossed the courtyard, every step sounding louder than it should. A whisper of wind returned just long enough to creak the old bell tower above him. The 5th bell didn't swing. It never did. But the 4 others? They moved just enough to let him know they remembered how. Inside, it was colder. The stone hallways swallowed light. His flashlight danced across walls lined with rotted scrolls and faded murals. most too damaged to decipher, others defaced with scratch marks, as if someone or something had tried to claw them off. Then he found it, a prayer alcove at the end of a narrow hallway. Inside, covered in dust, was a journal, tattered, water-stained. Azim's notebook. Rafik froze. His name was scratched into the corner. He opened it slowly. The first few pages were meditative reflections, typical Azim. Notes on silence, inner peace, detachment. But then, the handwriting changed. Messier, paranoid. The bells don't just toll, they speak. I dreamed it last night. The fifth bell rang, and I couldn't move. I think it's inside me now, echoing. Some entries were scratched out entirely. Others ended mid-sentence. The final page had only 4 words. It breathes. It watches. That night, Rafik slept in one of the monks' quarters, or tried to. The walls creaked with a rhythm, a slow inhale, a pause, and then the groaning of stone as if the monastery was exhaling through the cracks. He woke around midnight. No wind, no movement, but he heard it. A bell, soft, muffled, once, twice, 3 times. 4. He held his breath, waiting for the 5th. Silence. Then a whisper. Not from outside, but inside his head. You're listening now. He didn't sleep after that. Chapter 3. Azim's Trail. Rafik read the journal 3 times before the cold forced him to stop. Each time, the words hit differently. Not just what was written, but how. The tone changed halfway through, like Azim wasn't writing as himself anymore. He flipped to a page marked with a strange ink blot in the shape of an eye. On it, Azim had drawn a crude sketch of the bell tower. Underneath, a phrase scribbled over and over. The 5th is not heard by ears. It's heard by the soul. The next morning, Rafik searched the eastern wing of the monastery. He wasn't sure why. He just felt pulled. Every hallway looked the same. Stone, shadows, silence. But he noticed small things now. Things he hadn't before. Boot prints, half-melted candles, ash in a bowl that was still warm. Someone had been here recently, or never left. Then he found it. A locked door behind a collapsed archway. Faded symbols carved above it. Not Urdu, not Arabic. Something older. He pressed his ear to the wood. Breathing. Not wind, not rats. Slow, human, breathing. But when he kicked it open, nothing. Just a circular stone room filled with hundreds of hanging bells. Small, thin, silent. The walls were painted with strange figures. Monks with hollow eyes, their mouths wide open, facing a dark spiral in the sky. He found more pages from Azim's journal in a cracked clay bowl. I saw myself today, in the mirror, but it wasn't me. The monastery reshapes itself. Each room is different when I return, like it's learning me. The 5th bell is not a sound, it's a place. That night, the dreams came stronger. He was back in the bell tower, but this time he wasn't alone. Azim stood at the top of the spiral staircase, barefoot, face pale, eyes pitch black. He held the bell rope. You should have come sooner, Azim said, smiling. Then he pulled it. The 5th bell rang, and Rafik woke up screaming. His ears were bleeding, but no bell had rung. Now, the monastery wasn't just silent. It was changing. Hallways curved where they hadn't before. Doors appeared where there were only walls. Every time he turned around, something was slightly off. Wrong. He began to lose track of time. His watch had stopped. The sun hadn't risen in 2 days. Azim's voice echoed in his head now. Not from the journal, not in dreams, but everywhere. The monastery is not a place. It's a mind, and it wants to be remembered. Rafik stared up at the bell tower that night, snow blowing around him in circles. The 5th bell still hung in silence, but now it felt like it was waiting. Chapter 4. The Tolling Inside Short Version. The monastery had changed. Walls curved in ways they hadn't before. Doors disappeared. Stairs circled back to where they started. It felt less like a building now, and more like something alive. And beneath it all, a sound. The fifth bell. Not ringing aloud, but vibrating in his bones. Rafik could feel it. Deep, low, constant. Like a heartbeat in the stone. Like it was inside him. He wasn't sure how long he'd been here. Time had stopped making sense. He kept waking in strange rooms. Sometimes his own. Sometimes not. Once he found claw marks inside a wall. Another time he passed a mirror, and his reflection smiled without him. The bell tower called him back. The fifth bell hung there, huge and frozen, yet its rope twitched when he looked away. When he reached to touch it, his fingers passed through. "You've already heard it," a voice whispered behind him. "You just don't remember." He tried to escape. But no matter which path he took, he always returned to the monastery. It was like the place was folding reality around him. And that night, it finally happened. He stood beneath the bell. The wind stopped, the stars vanished, and the fifth bell rang. One long, slow toll that shook the sky. Rafik dropped to his knees, ears bleeding, vision spinning. And in that terrible silence after, he felt something deep inside him break. Chapter 5: The One Who Listens. Rafik no longer trusted his senses. He didn't remember walking, yet he found himself in a corridor. Didn't remember sleeping, yet he woke in places he didn't recognize. The monastery was inside him now. He felt it under his skin, whispers echoing through his blood. The fifth bell had rung, and with it something had changed. He saw things he couldn't explain. Flickers of movement in stone. Voices in places where there was no air. The monks, no longer illusions, stood at the edge of his vision, watching. In the silence, he heard breathing. Not his own, not human. Came from the walls, from the ceilings, from the floor. It wasn't just watching him now. It was waiting. He found Azim's final journal page nailed to the inside of a door. "You can't leave once you hear the fifth bell. Not because it traps you, because it becomes you." The words were written in blood. Rafik stared at them for a long time, then looked up, and saw himself standing at the other end of the hallway. Not a mirror, not a trick, a perfect version of himself. Only the eyes were different, hollow, black, and ringing with faint sound. The double opened its mouth. "You're the bell now," it said. "The monastery needs someone to listen." He ran, through endless corridors, past twisting rooms, but every door led back to the bell tower. The fifth bell was swinging now, slowly, heavily. Rafik stood beneath it, eyes wide, trembling. "Why me?" he whispered. No answer, only the low toll. Each note shook his ribs. Each vibration unraveled his memories. He dropped to his knees. Then calmly he smiled, and whispered back, "I can hear it now. In a distant village, the snow has stopped falling. But sometimes, when the wind is just right, a deep, distant bell can be heard from the mountains. And those who hear it, they vanish, because the bell doesn't just toll for the dead. Tolls for the listener."